Turn to Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country probably killed the leader of Hamas. Israeli sources told CNN Mohammed Sinwar was targeted in a strike on a Gaza hospital last week. He replaced his brother Yahya Sinwar after the Israeli military killed him last year. CNN reached out to Hamas for comment. During that same news conference, the Prime Minister again said that Israel will take control of Gaza. Take a listen.
Our forces are capturing more and more territory to clear off Hamas terrorist infrastructure, and at the end of this process, all the areas of the Gaza Strip will be under Israeli security control.
Well, multiple countries are criticizing Israel after soldiers in the occupied West Bank were firing warning shots at a group of diplomats. Well, the Palestinian Authority says the delegation included representatives from more than 20 countries, including the UK, France and Canada. The Israeli military says the group had deviated from an approved route and entered a restricted area, adding it, quote, regrets the inconvenience caused. No injuries were reported. The head of UNRWA in the West Bank saying that the incident raises, quote, serious concerns over how the Israeli military treats Palestinian civilians. Our Jeremy Diamond is following all these developments and joins us now live. Good to see you, Jeremy. So let's start with that. The first news that we're hearing from Israel, that they say the Hamas leader is likely dead, possibly killed a week ago. What else is Israel saying, and have you heard any more from Hamas about this claim?
Well, Hamas has yet to confirm or deny that Mohammed Sinwar, who was Hamas's de facto leader in Gaza, whether or not he was indeed killed in that Israeli strike on the European hospital in Khan Yunis, which killed at least 28 people and injured 50 others. The Israeli Prime Minister tonight, for the first time, saying that it seems that Sinwar was likely killed in that strike, although the Israeli military itself has yet to actually confirm that. As I understand it, the Israeli military has been conducting checks on intelligence, verifying information to try and get a final determination here, but they have yet to reach that final determination. We actually heard similar comments from the Israeli Prime Minister last summer in the wake of the killing of Mohammed Deif, Hamas's military commander, with the Prime Minister also making similar remarks about the likelihood of him having been killed before a few weeks later the Israeli military actually confirmed that that was the case.
Jeremy, what else can you tell us about Israel's long-term strategy in light of the fact that Netanyahu is again saying that Israel would take control of Gaza?
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister tonight once again made quite clear that he has some very serious hardline demands as it relates to the aims that he is trying to achieve in Gaza. Not only once again making this vow that the Israeli military will seize total security control of the Gaza Strip as Israeli troops are now moving on a new offensive that is involving tens of thousands of Israeli troops. But the Prime Minister also making clear that he will only end the war under very specific conditions, some of which are red lines for Hamas, including, for example, this notion of Hamas disarming, of the Gaza Strip being entirely demilitarized. But in addition to that, the Prime Minister tonight adding a new condition to the list, saying that he wants to ensure that Trump's plan is carried out. And what he's referring to there is this idea of quote-unquote voluntary migration of Palestinians in Gaza outside the Gaza Strip. In other words, the mass and potentially forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza following a period of time during which conditions in Gaza will have been made unlivable. And so that was new to hear that from the Prime Minister. And if he continues along this route, then you are going to see the kind of pressure that we are already witnessing this week from France, Canada, the United Kingdom, and several other countries continue to mount.
Yeah, we will stay on this story. Jeremy Diamond, good to have you joining us live. Thanks so much. Well, humanitarian organizations are beginning to deliver aid inside Gaza for the first time since Israel began its blockade more than 11 weeks ago. Israel allowed aid trucks to enter Gaza starting Monday. However, up until just hours ago, the United Nations said it was still waiting for Israel's permission to distribute it. Humanitarian groups say today's deliveries are just a drop in the bucket. The group, Doctors Without Borders, says that this new aid is insufficient and just a smokescreen to pretend the siege is over. Well, my next guest is the president and CEO of Save the Children US. Her organization is warning that thousands of babies could die without immediate aid. Well, I want to welcome Yanti Soripto. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start just on that, the dire situation, how desperate the people are in Gaza right now, especially the children. Just describe the situation for us.
Yeah, the situation is as desperate as it has ever been, and it was pretty desperate before. As you said, since March 2nd, nothing has come in. The initial announcement that this week aid would be allowed back in was, of course, very much welcomed. But so far, we haven't seen a huge amount of trucks being let in. I think the first day were about 5 or 6. And then some more the second day. But again, none of those trucks, or very few of those trucks, have been allowed to be distributed. So maybe they are on the Gaza side of the border, but it doesn't mean they've actually got it into the hands of the parents and the children who desperately need this food.
Yeah, and despite Israel's agreement to allow that humanitarian aid into Gaza, no aid has reached the Palestinians for 11 weeks until now. Just explain the situation and the difficulties of trying to get aid in.
Look, our team's on the ground, and we have over 100 people still there, trying to work every day to make something happen. We still have some supplies available to us in our warehouses, which came in the period of the ceasefire. We are trying to keep children in a few child-friendly spaces, as we call them, to help them be kids where we can. We're running out of supplies. Mothers are telling us that they are putting grass or animal fodder chopped up in food for children to make it last longer. They're telling us that they're feeding their children at night so they don't have to go to sleep hungry, so that at least they can get some sleep on a somewhat fuller tummy. But clearly, none of this, what's happened so far, even this week, has been nearly enough to address the real risks of widespread starvation, which, and that is happening as we speak.
Yeah. The U.S., of course, built a pier at a cost of $320 million to deliver aid to Gaza via the sea. Whatever happened to that? And are there any other avenues to get aid in?
Yes, and at the time, this was last year, we and many other humanitarian organizations on the ground expressed our sincere concerns about that, said it was an incredibly expensive way to deliver aid, whilst there are perfectly fine opportunities to go via land, as long as we open those gates with monitoring of aid, of course, and supplies. But why do something really expensive and try something new whilst there are, workable mechanisms on land? And so it turned out to be. I think the pier was operational for all of 20 days. Then inclement weather also turned out, made the whole thing operationally impossible. And we were sincerely concerned at the time also with the safety and security protocols around it. So again, that whole alternative to delivering aid on the ground did not work, was a distraction to actually making work what we know works and what worked during the ceasefire. From January until March 2nd, when there was a ceasefire, over 600 trucks per day came in, and the humanitarian community, all agencies, were able to deliver aid at scale to a desperate population. We treated children for malnutrition. We vaccinated them against polio. We helped pregnant women with births, with their antenatal and postnatal checks, etc. Of course, the situation was still desperate, but it wasn't as desperate as now, when thousands of children are on the brink of starvation.